living in, we could not easily flee to another country. Japanese people learned that the best way for survival is to not stand out and to not pursue personal interests, which is exactly what collectivism is all about. Please imagine the metaphor I introduced earlier about the group of people living on a boat in the ocean. Our ship is frequently hit by storms, and when it is, everyone has to work together in order to get through it. No matter how much you hate this dangerous environment, you cannot run, because if you get off the ship, you will die. Even today, several people who didn't follow the rules and caused trouble during emergencies were kicked off the ship. In order to avoid being like them, I should always look at the people around me and live like everyone else so I don't accidentally stand out. This is the very idea of Japanese collectivism. Next, it was the ruling system during the Edo period that changed the Japanese society into an even more collectivist one. The most significant feature of this period is that it was a miraculously peaceful time with no wars for over 250 years. But this was due to the overwhelming dominance of the Tokugawa shogunate. They used the original collectivist traits of the Japanese people to perfect their complete control. Here are some examples of what the Edo shogunate specifically did. 1. Dividing the land into clans and creating family register system so people cannot easily leave their hometowns. 2. Dividing the people into social classes and determining where they can live, what they can do, and what they can wear, etc. 3. Restricting trade with and movement to foreign countries. 4. Introducing Neo-Confucianism to educate that protecting faces and always obeying superiors are a virtue. Anyone who broke these rules would be severely punished. And if you were a samurai, you will be ordered to commit seppuku. In other words, they tried to eliminate conflicts and minimize problems by clearly deciding who could live where and what they could do on the ship. Thus, among the Japanese people, the most important thing in life is not to disturb the harmony within the space and to carry on the tradition without making changes. Our ancestors lived and died fulfilling their assigned status and role as they were supposed to. It's hard to believe that such a complete control by a single government was possible, but history speaks for itself. Now, before we move on to the next chapter, there is one thing I need to make clear. It is that Japan is a collectivist society, but this doesn't mean that each individual actually values the group and likes to do the same thing as everyone else. If Japan is collectivist because it likes and cares the group, then we should be helping each other more, right? While acting in a collectivist manner, each person is an individualist, putting their own interests first. This is the point where Japan's collectivism is unique. 3. How collectivism and Japan's coldness are related. Finally, this is the most important part of today's video. The biggest difference between collectivism and individualism is whether people act to earn positive points or to avoid negative points. Let me use some examples to explain. An individualistic society is an environment where people have to manage to survive on their own in a large land where they can move around freely. It is important to know how competent and valuable you are to society, which will determine whether or not you will be accepted. In other words, people who are more skilled or can act for the benefit of others are valued. Therefore, people act in order to earn positive points. In collectivism, this is the complete opposite. A collectivist society is a society where people live together on a boat in the ocean, following the rules and being careful not to be spotted and kicked out. In other words, the main focus of our actions is how to avoid being different from others and being rejected from society. In collectivism, being outstandingly better than others or being unnecessarily kind to someone can even have a negative meaning. It's because that person is different. In reality, there are tons of people who criticize those who take part in volunteer activities as trying to unneedily show they are a good person, or those who donate to charity as a publicity stunt. Let's also use the analogy that individualism is a one-person race, and collectivism is a race with 30 people on 31 legs. Because you run in races alone in individualism, the faster and more skilled you are, the better. However, collectivism requires all 30 people to run at the same stride and pace, otherwise they will all fall together. One person who is incredibly fast, tall, or have outstanding abilities is just a nuisance. This is why these kind of people are attacked and kicked out of the group. People who live in an individualistic society might look at the current situation of Japan and ask, why don't you guys do things more rationally? Or how long are you going to follow the same old rules? This is because the Japanese people still believe that it's good to tie each other's legs together and force each other to be the same. Or I should say, that's the only way they know how to run a society. So, let's wrap this up. The answer to the question, why don't Japanese people share with others? Or why are they cold-hearted? Is doing something good for others has a rather negative meaning. It is better to do nothing than to do something badly and stand out. This is the fundamental way of thinking of Japanese people. Regarding the things that I have explained, the main reasons why Japan's ranking in the World Giving Index has dropped especially during the corona pandemic are 1. You will be attacked by others if you test positive with COVID, so people quit interacting with others. 2. People who used to help visitors from abroad are no longer doing so because of the isolation. In Japan, people who have tested positive with COVID or were financially troubled by it were not helped or supported, but rather subjected to violence as they were considered to be a burden to the group, or in this case, the country. Many celebrities have suspended their activities due to COVID-related events, and people living in the countryside put up signs all over town telling people to not come home from the cities. Seeing this situation, people start to avoid getting involved with others as much as possible. Also, I often heard from overseas travelers that Japanese people are very kind and that random people on the streets gave them directions. I think this is because Japanese know that people from overseas don't follow the same rules as in Japan, so it is easier for those who want to be nice to do so. For me too, it takes a lot of courage to help a Japanese person. But if it's a person from abroad, I can help them without thinking twice. Since Japan is currently in a long state of isolation due to COVID, I expect that people from overseas are hardly in town, and help has almost been completely lost. So now, before we end this video, I want to make it very clear that I am not suggesting that individualism is justice and collectivism is evil.